What unsupervised childhood activities did you participate in that probably should have killed you? Swimming in the drainage canal by my house. Barbed wire, hosh, concrete, fertilizer runoff, etc. My brother and I would bend our mattresses in half and then sit on them, release them and fling ourselves across the room into the wall. We were not bright children, but damn did we have fun. My cousins and I, from the time we were toddlers, were just sent out into the forest in the morning with nothing but whistles to scare the bears. One time I chased a bear. Oh man, I could write a book about it. Growing up in the Rust Belt and playing in the industrial relics, I'm still surprised I'm somehow alive. Plus my buddy's grandpa was a gunsmith, so we had black powder. You can imagine what we did with that. Also swimming in the river and fricking around by the train tracks. Yeah, I don't know how I even still have all my OEM fingers and toes. The Great Rock Wars. In grade school we played this during recess. We just whipped pebbles at each other. Hard. Also, I pay homage to my fallen 4th grade friend, may we never forget you. We used to dig tunnels through the hay that they stored in the barn that would be like 10 meters high in places. The tunnels would regularly collapse and we'd just shrug it off and dig another. We used to play with chemicals in my neighbor's garage. Like combine all different kinds of chemicals we could find, I would assume lawn care and car chemicals, in her garage into a hole in the cement floor. At least we were smart or lucky enough to keep the garage door open. I grew up in Kigali, Rwanda. After the 1994 genocide there were landmines all over the place. We used to walk to our primary school, about 1.5 km. As kids we used to play soccer on the street while walking to school, so one day the ball fell in the bush as always, and I went for it. Little did I know that the stone-like thing under the ball was a notorious landmine. I got the ball and I asked the other older kid what it was. 10 minutes later the entire neighborhood was on site talking about how I just cheated death. Never will I ever forget it. If I stepped on the mine that afternoon, I wouldn't be writing this today. Go vote. Climbing trees way too high. In the 50s and 60s you could get chemistry sets complete with a vial of mercury and other dangerous chemicals. Man, it was fun playing with that mercury and mixing various chemicals to see what would happen. Next we'll talk about the wood burning set and the toy that came with a cauldron to melt metal and pour it into molds to make soldiers and whatnot. All while mom was upstairs fixing dinner. I grew up within the boundaries of Tufts University's campus. At the end of my street was a campus building that was 6 stories high. I remember climbing to the top of the fire escape, stepping over the railing onto the slate-pitched roof. I held onto the dormer and made my way on top of that roof. Then I would walk up to the pitch of the roof and straddle the pitch and look out on the Boston skyline. I was under 10 years old. Well over 100 feet up, one slip and I was sidewalk pizza. I can't believe I survived being a latchkey kid in the 80s. I used to have free rein in the woods behind the base housing at Fort Bragg. My friends and I would ride our bikes through the woods for hours in the summer at the tender age of 7 like it wasn't a big deal. I'd never let my 7-year-old now wander around the woods like that nowadays. One day we found a vine that was dangling next to a ravine and do a Tarzan Juno across it. It was probably a good 30-foot drop to the bottom of a pit filled with jagged rock and dubious puddles of ick. I wasn't supposed to show my parents, but I did one day and they freaked out and cut it down. My friends were mad at me for like a minute until they all agreed it was indeed incredibly dangerous and for the best. Perhaps the most logical conclusion I have ever seen kids come to in my life. Previous owner of my childhood home left a bunch of random chemicals in the garage. He was into home improvement and stuff, and my siblings tooled to playing mad scientist. Several instances of unknown gases spreading through the garage later and we're still around. Playing on my grandma's house roof. An old day house. Slates came off on their own. Edit. Once my cousin got stuck and my brother had to carry him down. It was so scary. Fire. Lots of fire. Back in the old days when folks didn't lock doors, my dumb used to go in my neighbors' houses and wander about while they slept. Then I'd get scared and leave. Very dangerous as a 6-year-old young lady. Edit. It was 1994, my parents were asleep and I was stealthy. It was maybe the same 4-5 family houses on my block and I never got caught. I have many angels. RIP to the folks that engage in these activities, but never made it to this thread. Growing up in a family that hunted, it wasn't uncommon to find 22 bullets in the garage or in hunting bags. My brother would take bullets that he found, place them on a log, and then smash them with a hammer. Luckily he outgrew that phase. Lawn darts. Except no one was throwing them at the rings. Nope, toss them straight up in the sky and scatter. Edit. Holy shit. Woke up to a megatron of notices and immediately thought, oh what comment of mine was a total freak up. Turns out nope, no freak up, just a bunch of kindred souls. Making snow forts. Fortunately my friend found my legs because I was panicking while suffocating. Some parents seem concerned their kids will have sex when they're teenagers. I'm terrified my kids will go off and do some of the things I used to do with friends and get unlucky and die. There was a train bridge near where I went to school. It went over a ravine with a shallow creek. We would climb underneath it. For a little bit it was a middle school fad to throw yourself off public buses as they were slowing down and do a roll on the sidewalk. I smacked my midsection on a telephone pole and had bruises for weeks lol. As fun as it really was, I am still surprised how more of us didn't get seriously injured, killed on old school playground equipment. I'm 29 but I'm old enough to remember when playgrounds were filled with gravel, not wood chips or shredded rubber. Holy hell. Good thing small kids are shockingly resilient because I know I face planted on those rocks more times than I can count. Edit. It has been brought to my attention that the wood chips were not much better. Either way, getting scraped up is part of being a kid, and life for that matter. One of the favorite places to hang out when I was a teenager was a disused railway bridge on the edge of the town. The land had begun to reclaim the top and was all overgrown, except for a small part in the center. There were amazing views of the town from there, and we used to head up there most summer evenings and relax with some smokes and alcohol. It was fairly well hidden from public and the police, so we used to get up to no good. One dude who was irritating AF used to tag along, as he was the younger brother one of the girls. He was sat on the 1-foot wall looking down at the stream below, and this lad grabbed him and dangled him over the edge. Was a pretty big drop down to the rocky stream underneath, maybe 30 feet. The dead let go of the poor lad's hand, so he grabbed the wall of the bridge. Then he let go of his other hand. Again, he clung onto the wall for dear life. Then fell. Luckily, there was no serious damage, other than his soaked clothes. The lad who dangled him over didn't hang round with us after that, we made sure of it. Evil Neveling my BMX bike off jumps into roads while a friend was supposed to be watching for cars but mostly stood there picking his nose looking at his untied shoelace. I used to rollerblade off the roof and onto the trampoline. It hurts to think about it now. I'm still shocked I never got hurt. Morning edit. Wow. So this is what it's like. My gold cherry, now gone. Thank you for the awards. I'm glad everyone could share their trampoline stories. Setting everything on fire that I could get my hands on. I'm not a pyro. But I went through a phase when I was around 8 or 9 when I just lit on fire. Books, paper bags, toy cars, lawn furniture, Legos, the park down the street, action figures, sticks and leaves, etc. It was just for a short time and I grew out of it. But that had real potential for disaster. Before paintball, we only had BB guns to shoot at one another. Needless to say, there weren't any fancy face masks or other protective gear. Bottle rocket wars at close quarters. No glasses. I grew up in the deep country. We had over 100 acres of rocky, hilly land with several creeks, and I had free roam of it from the time I can remember. I wandered several miles in every direction, climbed trees, rode horses and dirt bikes, waded in snake-infested water, got covered in ticks, stickers, and a few leeches. My cousins and I swam in creeks by splashing away snakes and huge snapping turtles. We swung on vines and climbed up in decrepit old barns. I can't imagine letting my kids have that kind of freedom in this day and age. Most of the time my mother had no idea where I was. I somehow never had many serious injuries. Probably the worst was getting thrown off my horse and landing on my tailbone so hard it knocked me out. Or getting kicked in the head by a cow. A small group of us would go camping almost every night during the summer and at least Fridays during the school year. One night we threw a can of spray paint in the fire and the resulting explosion triggered an addiction we didn't know we had. We ended up blowing up at least one can a trip for 5 years. We saved all the ones we could find and had over 500 cans. We would climb trees or a ladder we lashed between two trees that was 15-20 feet high and 10 feet from the fire but never once got injured despite some close calls. Cans exploding immediately right in our faces, logs being launched out of the pit, shrapnel from the cannon or the ball in the paint would shoot between us while on the ladder. Oh, and we were drunk most of the time too. It was dumb as hell but we never paid the price for it though, so it's one of my favorite high school era memories. And now we're experts in hucking dangerous shit of fire, so we've got that going for us. So at this water park called Sklitterborn, IDK, it's weird and it's in America so IDK, there is a river that goes by the side of it that's not technically part of the park but you can easily get in and out of it from the park. And people in tubes float down the river quite a bit. But there's this one part where there is a dam with a gap for the tubes, but there's a bit of rapids after that somehow has a flat rock that you can stand on and the current will push you, but there's enough rocks that it's definitely not a good idea to do that. So me and the boys being the idiots we are jump in the river with our tubes to let the current pull us through the rapids. Note that the current is really freaking fast, so if you hit a rock you'll probably break something or at least get a bad bruise. We get out unscathed and decided, you know what, frick waiting in lines, let's do this for 5 hours, and we did. Until one time I was going through and after the rapids the river gets suddenly deeper and there was a whirlpool that I didn't know about that sucked me down. In the 30 seconds I was down there I decided I was gonna drown to death, but at the final moments it spit me back up gasping for air and I landed safely on the bank. I informed my friends of this and then we decided to do it again for 15 minutes until a park employee told us to stop cause small children were following our lead and we headed back to the park. At 9, I boiled acid from a chemistry set and exploded the beaker, spreading molten acid all over the room. Glass shards missed my eye by millimeters. I built a roller coaster track down a steep hill when I was 10. The trial run nearly killed me. A friend and I built a spectacular bonfire out of a whole neighborhood worth of discarded Christmas trees. We built it inside a large storm sewer. It smoldered for days, sending smoke out storm drains for hundreds of yards. I barely got out of the storm sewer alive. As far as I know, nobody even called the fire department. Apparently smoke coming out of drains was passé. I rode my bike 45 minutes each way on rural highways with poor visibility and no shoulders in order to spend 10 minutes kissing a girl before her parents told me to go away. Age 14 was hell. I stepped out into traffic in front of a bus in London, England. I didn't see the bus because I was a stupid American who looked the wrong way for oncoming traffic. I was pulled back to the curb by an anonymous hero who saved my life. talking to other random kids on MySpace and going to meet with them IRL. We took trains and buses without our parents' knowledge or approval. It could have ended up really bad, but everyone was cool and normal lol. I used to fill balloons with my dad's oxygen acetylene torch from work and throw them in bonfires. The explosions were so thunderous we'd have cops riding up and down the block. I can remember doing it one time and flaming debris burning a sand dollar-sized hole in my starter jacket. Oh, and going hunting with my friend at 13 and shooting shotguns at trees that we were standing near when one of us wasn't looking to scare each other. Also almost becoming a vegetable a few times from freshly waxed handrails while skateboarding with no helmets. When I was a teenager, my friends and I used to organize these scavenger hunts in downtown Chicago, but instead of finding things you had to do things instead. We got the idea from a Viva La Bam, and it originally just started with 4 of us and a list of like 50 things and grew to like 35 people with a list of almost 200 things and thrift store trophy for the winner. I did a lot of stupid things because of these scavenger hunts, because the list was ridiculous. Things like eating 6 raw eggs, eating a dollar bill, holding a conversation with a street sign for 5 minutes, crossing the street by weaving between cars during downtown traffic, jumping from stupid heights, etc. We even got kicked out of Water Tower Place for playing tag when the hunt got rained out. The amount of stupid things that were done on that hunt by a bunch of dumb teenagers was amazing. I'm honestly surprised that not one of us was injured during this, with the exception of my friend Ryan, who got some sort of aerosol burn on his nipple. Road near my house had a dip in it. We'd go down it in pretty much anything with wheels. Usually bikes, scooters, skateboards, but got pretty creative. I got dared to go down in rollerblades once and got my first concussion. We also took down a wagon, a go-kart, and a shopping cart. The road was also used by cars. If one's coming, just get in the other lane. If two, throw yourself off the shoulder and hope you don't hit anything important on the drain pipe. I had between 25 and 30 acres of land growing up in 2 separate states. My parents could have cared less. There goes 8-year-old me with sometimes a .22 rifle and sometimes just a stick wandering in the woods for hours alone. Next to the site of a rattlesnake roundup in South Texas and near Tucson. In summer. Never got bit but did meet coyotes, animal and human, javelinus, PTSD afflicted Vietnam vets, and had all manner of adventures. Back when my family lived in Panama, my brother and I would play coconut bowling. It was a game we made up where one of us stood atop a hill behind our house and rolled coconuts down the hill, while the other stood at the bottom trying to catch them before they rolled into the gutter. However, these coconuts were pretty hefty and sometimes they'd bounce up in the air a few feet due to their irregular shape and from hitting rocks, bumps in the hill, and could have potentially caused us some serious injury if they ever hit us in the head. They never did, but our mom put a stop to it before it did. So thank you, Mom, for not letting us cave in each other's skulls with coconuts. I've been willingly tasered about 11 times. Edit, sorry, didn't see the childhood part. I willingly stuck my toe into an electrical socket outlet. I used to go for all-day walks in the woods around my house when I was like 9 years old. My house is surrounded by hundreds of acres of woods and a lake. No way I would let my 9-year-old do that if I had kids. I used to play around in the houses that were being built in my neighborhood and dumpster dive in their big dumpsters full of rusty nails and other hazardous sh when I was like 7. Fun times. Playing on the frozen pond. Jumping off roofs and playing with matches. Me, my brother and sister set the side of the house on fire when we were 5, 6, 7. Someone left matches out and we just lit them and threw them on the ground. And when we were younger we would throw rocks at our cars when they passed by. Oh man. Playing in houses that were being built. I don't know how I made it past childhood. My brother and I once tried to see who could breathe the exhaust from our father's truck the longest. He stopped us before we could find out though. Hiding under cars pretending to be a secret agent. My friend and I got stuck in some quicksand that was the result of the local dam overflowing. Instead of getting out right away, we played in it like pigs in a mud bath, probably for about an hour. Then it actually took us a bunch of tries when we wanted to get out. We got home, covered from head to toe in mud, and my friend's mom scolded us because apparently there were pockets of air underneath the quicksand, so people every year were sucked down into them and died. Apparently they had to have divers come to look for the bodies and many were never found. Edit. We were about 9 years old. To this day, it is still one of my most fun memories. I grew up around a lot of conservation land. My favorite game was running deep into the woods in any directions as fast and as far as I could and then trying to find my way back home. This was before I was allowed to have a cell phone, and the woods swamp stretched acres in every direction. My parents didn't like this game for some reason, but my best friend did, and that was all that mattered to me. We used to play a game in the tunnel that ran under the highway. One of us would run down it as fast as we can. Not easy because it was about 5 feet tall and most of us were about that height, while the rest of the group would throw river rocks after them. It resulted in many injuries. Not me, but my father. He found something that had a powder explosive in it and broke it open and piled all of the powder up into a pile. He then proceeded to light it on fire and, in his own words, only saw white for something like 20 minutes. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a comment.